An absolute, it's relative to desire. Every time we seek something that we can't afford, we can be counted as poor, however much money we may actually have. And every time we're satisfied with what we have, we can be counted as rich, however little we may actually possess.
There are two ways to make people richer, reasoned Rousseau: to give them more money or to restrain their desires. Modern societies have succeeded spectacularly at the first option. But by continuously inflaming our appetites, they have at the same time helped to negate their own most impressive achievements. This analysis led Rousseau to one of his most provocative ideas, his concept of the noble savage. Rousseau argued that the so-called uncivilized peoples who lived in the forests, in the language of the day, savages, were not just morally better than the corrupted inhabitants of cities like Washington, D.C., they might also be happier. Modern societies might actually leave us feeling more deprived than primitive ones, where people contented themselves, in Rousseau's words, playing with crude musical instruments or using sharp-edged stones to make a fishing canoe.
I think it's possibly quite easy to dismiss Rousseau's ideas as a piece of romantic fantasy. But if so many people in the 18th century took these ideas so seriously, I think it's because they had before them one stark example of many of its apparent truths, in the shape of the fate of the North American Indians.
It's a picture of my grandfather and my grandmother and my aunt.
Warren Cook is deputy chief of what remains of the Pamunkey tribe, once led by the mighty Powhatan, king of Virginia and father of Pocahontas.
This is another picture of my aunt. I don't know why she has a gun, but probably gonna get an Englishman.
Reports of Native American life from the 16th century onwards had described it as materially simple but psychologically rewarding. Communities were close-knit, egalitarian, religious, playful, and martial.
Well, we have here how the people sort of dressed and what they sort of look like. These are called John White's drawings. And then, of course, a little bit of the music and the flutes and the rattlers.
So incredibly simple instruments.
Oh, of course, everything. You're talking about very primitive people, of course.
Within only a few decades of the arrival of the white man, the technology and luxury of European industry had awed the Native Americans.
When the English came over, everything, of course, changed. The native people wanted the thing that the English people had.
Do you think before the English came, they were more or less happy with what they had? I mean, they had a very simple life. What's your sense of...
Well, of course they were happy. They didn't know any better. They couldn't be unhappy because they didn't know what they didn't have.
I once read a letter between two English merchants saying the problem with the Indian tribes is that many of them don't want enough things. And then the other merchant said, yeah, but if you try and interest them in Venetian beads, they'll love those.
Well, everything was new. They would flash something new and exciting, and they had never seen before.
Their new possessions didn't appear to make the Indians much happier. Rates of suicide and alcoholism spiraled, and communities fractured. The tribal chiefs would have known what Rousseau was talking about.
How much land did the tribe have?
Well, you can say what is just about all of Virginia.
All of Virginia?
Yeah, plus more.
And now it's got
1,100 and some acres, that's about it.
And do you think the culture they've put in this place, I mean, we drove through, on the way here, through endless strip malls, Walmart, you know, KFCs, all these big brands, that's the culture that's replaced the Native American culture. And what do you think of the new American culture?
You got 10 times more things to be anxious about now.
What are we anxious about now?
we anxious about everything. You know, we got all these psychological problems. We got Prozac kids, Prozac women,
but in the
Prozac men.
But surely there, sure.
Well, you lost maybe just a simpler type of life without the anxieties.
The Indians ceased listening to the quiet voices that spoke of the modest pleasures of community and of the beauty of the empty canyons at dusk. And that, thought Rousseau, was what we'd all done.
I get angry when you read about it. You know, you go back and kind of relive what the poor people went through. I get mad at that.
When you meet an English person now, you feel angry or you forgive them?
You're English?
Yeah. So I'm asking nervously.
Would you like to swim? Do you love to swim?
You gonna throw me in?
It was an American psychologist, William James, who first explored from a psychological angle the particular problems that societies create for themselves when they start raising huge expectations in their citizens. And James illustrates this kind of fascinating dynamic between expectations and fulfillment in a kind of theory that he writes. He says that our self-esteem, that thing that we're all searching for, self-esteem, is the result of two things: success, the number of things that we're successful at, over expectation, the number of things that we expect to be successful at. And really what he's saying by this is that in order to have high self-esteem, you can do two things: either become more successful or lower the number of things that you expect to be successful at. And the problem, James says, of modern American societies and also Western European is that they're constantly placing us under huge pressures to succeed. They're constantly raising the level of our expectations, and in so doing, they're making self-esteem a very elusive thing indeed. Every rise in our levels of expectation entails a rise in the risks of humiliation. And if we do fail, how much sympathy can we expect from other people when the system seems bent on removing every excuse we might have for our failures?
I worry about trying to survive, trying to make it, you know, just working hard, trying to provide for my kids, trying to keep a nice home over their head and make sure, because in our society today, it's hard.
Move into a better house, get a better car, buy better clothes, and then when God gets finished, tell him to give you the mic and let you testify.
Things will never have that big house I see in the TV.
You've got to decide to be relentless. You've got to decide never to give up. You got to be hungry.
If you're rich, you're rich. If you're poor, you're poor. It's not, you know, and then if you're in between, you got to strive to stay where you're at, or you're going to fall under.
God is sick and tired of his people looking like lemons in the face. He wants you to enjoy your life.
I worry about my safety. You know, I'm a young black man. Most young black males either dead or locked up. You know, that's horrible. I don't want to have to worry about that. You know what I mean? That's not living to me. That's not living at all. You know? See, the only time, a lot of times I would be able to get on camera is if I was coming out of court. You know what I mean? Or something else.
The street could those of the African-American Civil War Memorial. Doors open outside.
No country embodies the meritocratic ideal like America. It is, we're constantly being told, a wide-open country where anyone who works hard can succeed. This constant striving can disturb the mental calm of people who are, to all intents and purposes, rich. But it has also changed their attitudes towards the poor.
Of course, America isn't a meritocracy. You only have to look around you to see that the system is weighted in favor of certain groups and massively weighted against others. You only have to remember the issue of race.